I'm Gary Null. We're going to go to our guest in just a moment. But someone last evening asked a question. What am I about? Why do we have this network? It's simple. To allow a forum for independent thinking people who are empowering people by the truth, not by ideology. A few examples on health. Vaccine science and policy. I believe in supporting a complete re-review of all of our vaccine policies until we have absolute proof of long-term safety and efficacy by independent experts in the field, including immunologists and toxicologists, that we should not be having massive vaccines, and many of them mandatory. We should have health freedom. We should also have the ability to look at what is healthy and promote preventative programs. It is much easier and less expensive to promote a disease from being implemented into our system by a faulty diet and lifestyle habits than it is to try to treat it afterwards. I believe that America's addiction to pharmaceutical drugs should be at the top of our priority list, including the fraudulent science, off-label marketing, aggressive advertising in search of ever larger profits. And now 1 in 5 American adults and children are addicted to some form of medication. I believe that we have massive corruption within our FDA, CDC, National Institutes of Allergies and Infectious Disease, National Institute of Health, and Health and Human Services. We need to depoliticize our oversight agencies. We also need to ban life-threatening chemicals that are in the commons, from the pesticides and aspartame and benzene and biphenyl and DEET and MSG and formaldehyde. Many of these chemicals, over 80,000, have never been tested, yet the burden of proof is on we, the citizens. I believe that we should have universal health care, and I believe as single payer, I believe in the environment, that we should battle against global warming, deniers, and let the real science dictate policy. I believe that we should educate the public about environmental tipping points, the dangers of genetically modified food, clean up our entire nuclear mess, close them down. We don't need them. I believe that we should have a war against dirty energy and stop supporting coal and gas hydrofracking and support true green renewable energies. I believe that also that we should have a national green jobs campaign. We could plant hundreds of millions of trees. We could create biomass, geothermal, hydroelectric technologies, wind, solar, wave, and we're not doing that to any measure. We should also, in economics, expose the myths behind the neoliberal free market capitalism, the Reagan, Thatcher, Bush, Clinton economic revolution that destroyed the American economy, impoverished millions, diverted world riches to a tiny elite segment of the population, and triggered massive global recession. We have to expose this, reinstate the Glass-Steagall Act, and let banks fail. No more bailouts. And also debt freedom. Let students get out of the interest, let them get out of their debt, and abolish NAFTA, GATT, CAFTA, World Trade Organization, and stop these secret transatlantic and trans-Pacific partnership deals that have nothing to do with enhancing the quality of our life, our environment, but actually would deter us from being able to live that. Stop all taxpayer subsidies, large corporations. Make every corporation pay a tax. Don't allow any more deductibles that they don't have to pay taxes. Repeal the Patriot Act. Reduce the Homeland Security mandate. Support third-party systems. Take all money out of politics. Abolish Citizens United. It's just ludicrous, the concept of corporate personhood. And overturn the National Defense Authorization Act and the National Defense Resource Preparedness Executive Order. Bring an end to the American empire building and global militarization. Improve and strengthen public education. End the class warfare and growing inequality gap. And those are some of the things that I believe we should be paying attention to. Back in a moment with my guest. Please stay with us.
Whoa, 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 whoa.
I'd like to welcome you all. I'm Gary Null. From Washington, D.C., our guest, Ralph Nader. And Ralph is he is simply one of the most influential Americans over the last 40 years in creating more laws and bills and legislation that supported we the people than any politician, yet he wasn't one. And when he wanted to become one, unfortunately, the corporatized elite 1% of the left saw that didn't happen. What had he been able to do if he were elected? Could you imagine what a different world it would be today? Let's go to Washington and say hello to Ralph Nader. Nice to have you with us today, Ralph.
Nice to be with you and your listeners, Gary.
While the left and the right and the progressives might regard themselves in the middle, acknowledge many points of agreement, there remain sharp ideological differences between them and that have prevented any kind of unified coalition building between the various independent factions that fall under these headings. Still, there are independents on the left who will side with the corporate Democrats on issues, and the independents on the right, libertarians who will remain loyal to the corporate Republicans on many policies and beliefs. Nevertheless, you have systematically reviewed the area of convergence between them and identified over 20 areas where there is strong agreement. Could you go through those areas of agreement so that in the next election cycle that will be starting shortly, we can start sharing a platform to bring people together to get rid of the corporatists? Take your time and lay out your thoughts.
'44 BC. The vast Roman Empire stretched around the entire Mediterranean. Julius Caesar, proclaimed dictator in perpetuity, assumed full powers and governed like a king. The new regime was despised by the majority of senators who remained faithful to the Republic. Cassius and Brutus, leaders of the discontented, prepared to riposte. On the Ides of March, the 15th, Caesar's right-hand man, Mark Antony, accompanied the dictator to a meeting at the Senate. In an attempt to save the threatened republic, Brutus and Cassius assassinated Caesar. Antony, the second most powerful man in the empire, had good reason to fear for his life. Meanwhile, Rome was plunged into panic, the city divided between Republicans and supporters of Caesar. According to the plebes, a god had been murdered and Rome was doomed. People feared a bloodbath.
République, et donc César n'est pas un roi susceptible de pouvoir léguer un royaume à des héritiers.
Caesar's funeral would serve as the ideal occasion for Antony to convince Rome that he was the rightful guardian of Caesar's heritage.
Oci Caesar privatus mortuus esset. Magnis orationibus non mihi opus esset. Sed quoniam et ille in summo imperio perit, et ego etiam consulantum Gero. Nullas rescredicente sunt tacere debeo. Certer pater ille, canvis pontifex maximus, sacrosanctus, vir magnus, divus, tamen ab amicis, a civibus oxissus est, fam nullus hostis interficere potuerat. Quid opus fuit telenitate tua, o Caesar? Quid sacrosanctitate? Quid legibus? De crudelissime ab amicis oxissum esse. O dolorem, o cuorem a canno capillo stilantem. Laceratam togam, quam nulla ratione vestivisse videris, nisi ut in ea ferum reciperes. Per Iovem, Rome custodem, per celestes Deos, iuro, iusurandum do, me Caesaris mortem per secuturum esse.
At the end of his speech, Antony approached the improvised funeral pyre. Swept up in a fervor, the crowd set fire to the pyre and threw on arms, clothes, and jewelry, setting the premises of Caesar worship.